Hello, Alex. Nice to properly meet you.
Hello.
Welcome to It's Good for Your Portfolio, our alumni podcast, where we have very honest conversations about what it's like to be a creative freelancer and what I'm really interested in is talking to alumni and seeing where you are now after you graduated and I suppose what your career has looked like because, everybody's journey is completely different. So why don't you just start off by introducing yourself and tell us what you've been up to?
Well, brilliant. Thanks, Saran. So my name's Alex. I'm a graphic designer and illustrator. I graduated from NUA in 2017. And since then, I've been living in Barcelona, working for various design agencies in the city. And more recently, I've been working as a freelance designer and illustrator.
Awesome. So we've had a little chat, obviously, on the lead up to this talk together. And I think one of the main topics I'd like to discuss with you is you graduated in photography, but as you said, you do a lot of illustration and graphic design. And I'm really interested in non-linear career paths and sort of how people use their degrees to create their own avenues in the creative industries. So tell me a little bit more about that and sort of what that journey looks like after graduation for you.
Yeah, so I'd probably say that my sort of career is as non-linear as it gets. I started off studying photography, and in my second year, I basically was really influenced by one of my housemates, this guy called Phil. He was making some really cool illustration work, and I was sort of feeling really inspired by it, and I was like, oh, I want to try my hand at that. And he just said to me, like, just start making stuff, start posting it on Instagram. So that's what I did. And then I was treating this kind of like as a little side hobby to my main photography degree. And after a while, I was realizing, oh, wait, I actually enjoy this a whole lot more than photography. But obviously, in my second year, it was a bit too late to sort of switch courses. And yeah, what I was advised by my tutors was like, okay, maybe you can start combining the two, find a unique way to be able to show photography and illustration together. So what I started doing is incorporating illustration into photography in the form of mixed media. So I was taking my photographs and then I was sort of manipulating the backgrounds or drawing over them, and just creating these pieces which felt like they were sort of neither one or the other. It just sort of existed in this place where it was like, oh, okay, they have a really sort of graphic, illustrative feel to them, but they were still photographs. And then with that, I started incorporating things like animation into it as well. I was experimenting with augmented reality. So you were able to sort of scan the images, and then illustrations and animations would suddenly like appear over it. So yeah, in my sort of second and third year, I started incorporating that into my work, and it ended up being my final piece of work that I was showing. And yeah, by the time I graduated, I just had all of these extra skills, and I realized like, okay, maybe I don't particularly want to be a photographer. I've been able to demonstrate how I can sort of combine illustration with photography, but it didn't feel like that was the direction I wanted to continue going in. So by the time I graduated, I decided to move to Barcelona just to have a completely different, just a different environment to be in, and start looking for work in the creative sector with a focus on sort of graphic design. Because for me, I felt that was like it felt to me at the time a more realistic point of entry into the creative industry. There were a lot more sort of graphic designer jobs going. It was a lot easier to be able to get a contracted job. So I just started applying for internships, sending out my portfolio. And yeah, that was kind of like my foot into the industry.
You sound so confident when you talk about your decisions as well, which I love, because I think, I don't know if it's like an impact of, COVID and things like that, but everyone feels a lot more sort of insecure about their choices now. And I hear a lot, it's like, oh, if I studied illustration, then I should be an illustrator. And if I'm not being an illustrator, then what was the point in me doing illustration? And there's a lot of this sort of like anxiety and shame around that kind of thing. I too studied photography here at Norwich University of the Arts. I graduated in 2012. That's quite a long time ago, but it's funny because a lot of it I don't remember because it was so long ago. And when I think about the sort of stuff that I do now, I'm still doing that. I'm still going, oh, is that really, oh, I don't know if I like this, or, so I think some of the things you've mentioned is like find that sort of experimentation period really helps you develop your own creative voice and your own style, I suppose, and then you sort of refined it. What advice would you give somebody if they were like, think about this as like somebody who's actually graduated and they've like done all this stuff and they look at their portfolio and they're like, actually, I don't like it and I'm not very proud of it. It's good and I've studied and whatever, but actually I want to change it. Like, what advice would you give someone in that position?
I would probably say, like, first of all, don't be too harsh on yourself. It's just like we're always going through these changes in life where one minute we love something, the next minute we've fallen out of love with it and we want to try something else. So it's like, I wouldn't, just because you've studied something and you've got that degree, I wouldn't say that it's like that's the thing that you're stuck with for the rest of your career. If you have other passions and other interests, go and pursue them. And like for me, I didn't do another degree in illustration or graphic design. I was just teaching myself and I was finding people that inspired me and talking to them. Like, there's other ways that you can sort of navigate this outside of university. It's not to say that like you have to go right back to the beginning and like go through the whole process again. And also as well, like with photography or whatever you study, you can still take those soft skills from it. You can not like making a portfolio for a photographer isn't that different to making it for an illustrator or a designer. So you can still take all of these skills and just apply them to whatever else you want to start trying out. So yeah, I would say like stay aware, like see the things that interest you even after you graduate. If you want to try 3D or you want to try textiles, whatever, like there's nothing to stop you doing that, and you can actually use your degree to be able to inform that and to create, I don't know, a unique outlook or a unique perspective. So
yeah, I totally agree. It's funny because as the alumni officer, I deliver sessions for the third years about sort of networking and making connections, and some of the stuff that comes out of that is about sort of being a little bit vulnerable and being brave and just going, okay, like this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. And a couple of times I've had students sort of go, yeah, but what if you're not sure yet? I'm like, that's also totally fine. Like you don't have to come out of university just be like, I'm really sure about who I am and what I'm doing now, because reality is you're right at the beginning of your career. Also on the flip side of that, you have people that have done stuff for like 15, 20 years and then they come back to us and they're like, I actually don't want to do that anymore. And I've been painting. And what do you think? And it's the same advice, like be playful, just keep working on it, like almost in a really cheesy way as well, looking at the work that you've produced, like your Marie Kondo, and just go like, which stuff makes me really happy? Like, what is it that I'm proud of? And just put the other stuff in a box for a bit and just like play with that for a while and see how you get on. Yeah, I think you're right. We definitely put a lot of pressure on ourselves, don't we? Great. Yeah, so
definitely.
I think as well we underestimate sort of how much all of these things are connected. So a lot of illustrators are photographers, a lot of photographers are filmmakers, and and those people all sort of meet in the middle at the core as like directors, art directors, colorists and editors, and because all the skill sets are very similar, aren't they? So trying not to sort of separate ourselves so much is really important.
Yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, it's the thief of joy. So something that you told me about as well is that you're really passionate about using your work to sort of advocate for things that you are really passionate about. So tell us a little bit about that and sort of what you're working on or what your dream project might be.
Yeah, so it's funny because it wasn't until after I graduated where I was kind of introduced to the idea and the concept of anxiety and depression. And I think it's quite funny because when you're in university, you're kind of like in this little bubble,
Yeah.
and you have no idea of like the outside world and the industry as a whole. And once you sort of leave that, you can feel quite isolated. And even when you're working in companies, you've got this pressure to be like performing and to be able to prove yourself. And I think there is a lot of pressure that we tend to put on ourselves. So yeah, what I found was that I was starting to suffer with my mental health, particularly with anxiety and depression. And it's something I've sort of dealt with the past sort of 7 years or so. And what I found was I started to use like illustration and design as a sort of form of self-therapizing, like being able to use that to, I don't know, to feel better about myself and to be able to create sort of positive change. So a lot of the illustrative pieces I was creating, for example, it sort of conveys this message of like self-acceptance and sort of yeah, just sort of empowering the communities around us and ourselves. So that was starting to become like a reoccurring theme within my work. And yeah, now that I'm a freelancer, it's the kind of direction I wish to sort of push with my jobs. The sort of clients have come to me saying like, "Oh, I like the work that you do about this. Can we do some branding based on I don't know, sobriety, for example?" I've worked with a client recently who's just started a platform about sobriety. So I helped him with the branding with that, and for me, it's nice to be able to give back in that sense and create something that's not just meaningful for me, but is there to sort of help society as well. So yeah.
I suppose it could also just make your work feel really purposeful as well, rather than just making for the sake of making. You're like, this is beautiful, but also it's doing something useful. So it's not just
Yeah, it's sort of it's impacting the society, and just being able to create for change, I guess.
Yeah, sobriety is a really interesting subject as well, because obviously in Britain, we're actually considered a wet country rather than a dry country. Is it the other way around? So one means that we're actually really good at drinking because we do it for fun, and one means that I think it's that we're a dry country because we binge so much. And it's quite interesting. Me and my friends talk about this a lot now. We're a bit older, and we tend to like meet up and not drink, or like actually go for one and then don't drink it, whereas like I remember when I was much younger, it's like, oh, why aren't you drinking? Oh, go on, have a drink. It's such a big thing, and people really don't look at that very much, do they?
Yeah, particularly at university, because it's like everybody is wanting to party and just have a good time, and then it's that can sort of stick with you. And yeah, for me personally, I found that going to Barcelona, because it's such a drinking culture here, so embedded in the society. So that was something I realized was affecting me, and I've recently become sober myself. So
it's a really cool
it's
thing to do.
interesting.
Yeah, I did stop drinking for like a month just to see how difficult it was. I was really interested to see what my relationship with alcohol was, and I realized I was drinking for when I was like stressed, because we do that here a lot. It's like, are you sad? Have a drink. Are you cold? Have a drink. Are you happy? Oh, let's celebrate and have a drink. And now I tend to like choose to drive places on purpose. So then I'm like, well, I'm not drinking because I'm driving, and sort of using that as as an excuse. Yeah, I'm like, oh, I would, but I'm
designated driver.
Get going. Yeah. But yeah, so now my new rule is like I only drink for fun. So like if I'm actually thinking, oh, I want to go out and have a couple of really nice cocktails, that's kind of the only time I drink now. If I turn to like, I want to have a drink because I feel sad, I'm like, no, you can't do that, because it just makes it worse.
Yeah.
And that's where anxiety
exactly.
comes for you, doesn't it? Especially in your sleep.
Definitely, yeah.
I really love your "I'm a lover, not a fighter" print. I think that's amazing.
Thank you. This one up here.
Your work's so like some of it really reminds me of like vintage circus signs, you know, that kind of, it's really vibrant and yeah, lovely. Great. So what are you working on at the minute, or can you tell us what your like dream project would be?
So at the minute, I've actually got a couple of branding projects. I tend to flip between sort of illustration and graphic design. Sort of follow where the work is, or even my moods as well. It's like, I think there's a lot of pressure to be creating illustrations like all of the time. So having the two, I can sort of balance it out. So yeah, at the moment I'm working on a couple of branding identities for some clients. Really fun, interesting stuff. Yeah, incorporating sort of AI as well, which is really
nice.
interesting. Can't speak too much because of the NDA. But yeah, it's been really interesting, especially as I've just been freelancing for just over a year now.
Yeah. How are you finding that?
So it's been all sorts of emotions. It's been a real roller coaster. Yeah. When I decided to go freelance, it was something I wanted to do for a very long time. I've been working for various agencies for the last like 6-7 years, so I had a lot of experience under my belt. But it's always that sort of trepidation of like, oh, when's the right moment? When should I do this? And yeah, I decided last year, like, let's just do it. Like, what's the worst that can happen? If I fall flat on my face, I can just go back to working for a company. And yeah, it's been a whole lot of freedom working as a freelancer, being able to sort of take on the projects that interest me. So going back to what we said about sort of social causes and sort of working for, I don't know, clients that I have an emotional connection to, rather than just sort of taking on any old project. So yeah, it's been really nice to do that. Obviously, in this industry, I won't lie, it's very tough. It feels very much like feast or famine these days. So I do have to sort of enjoy the highs, but also embrace myself for the low periods. And there's been a lot of months where work has been on the quiet side. So yeah, I think you just gotta storm the weather. Yeah, try and do as best as you can.
Yeah, that's the thing with freelancing, isn't it? It's like you have all that freedom of picking the projects that you want to work on and so on, but you also, what comes with that is like, oh, I don't know if I've got any money next month, or sort of having to plan so far in advance for things that you're like, oh, I've just made loads of money, that's great, and just going, yes, but I need to pretend that I haven't and put some aside instead of like living like a lord for a week. And then yeah, it's tricky.
Absolutely.
But you know, it's not something that happens overnight. It takes years, I think, for people to really find their feet with freelancing, and a lot of people sort of end up doing ad hoc agency work as well as freelancing to sort of cover the quieter months, but it depends where you're based and what you're doing. And but well done.
I
That's
think
very brave.
There's definitely thank you. Yeah, just saying on going on what you said, like there's within the sort of freelancing, there is a lot of other opportunities, like you said, like working ad hoc for agencies, temporary contracts, maternity leave, like stuff like that. Yeah, also like you can utilize your skills. Like even though I don't do photography as a main career choice now, I've had people say to me like, "Oh, you do photography, right?" And I'm like, "Yes. What do you need?" So like you can still take those skills that you had back at university and be able to sort of bring it back around into your career now. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think
absolutely.
it's been very helpful. And to be honest, it really helps me upsell myself and offer like a full 360 service.
Yeah.
So it's like if I'm working with branding, for example, it's like I can also do illustration, I can also do a bit of animation, a
Hmm.
bit of photography. So it really helps to have all these extra skills just to be able to sort of bring them to the table when you need to. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And it's what I call like bread and butter jobs sometimes, like you said about sort of pulling on those photography
Mhm.
skills. It's like, yeah, I might not put it on my website and shout about it, but I will take that work. Thank you. And that would be great. Um,
No, exactly.
yeah. Cool. Well, that's all from me, I think, in terms of questions. I'll stop hounding you now. Sometimes it feels like a bit of an interrogation,
No.
like, and then tell me what did you do. Um,
No, it's been a pleasure.
but what I'm going to do